Good evening. I will call this meeting of the Richfield Planning Commission to order. Today is June 22nd, 2020. Welcome everyone attending remotely and watching from home. For the time being and for everyone's safety, we will be meeting via the video conferencing platform Cisco Webex. Staff will be taking our votes through roll call for every vote we have. Assistant Planner Nellie Jerome will be doing that for us. Nellie, will you please take attendance?
Nellie, I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear Nellie?
No.
No.
Hi. Hi, Nellie. Nellie, could you please take attendance?
Okay, Nellie's.
There she is.
I'm gonna try one more time, Nellie.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Glitch.
We are.
Commissioner Hayward O'Leary.
Here.
Yep. Okay. Commissioner.
Can you repeat that?
Commissioner Lavin.
Here.
Can everyone make sure that they're muted? I think I'm just getting feedback. Okay, try again. Commissioner Pinn.
Here.
Chair Quam.
Here.
Commissioner Rosenberg. Absent. Commissioner Rudolph.
Here.
5 present, 1 absent. Commissioner Rosenberg is absent.
Thank you, Nellie. Next, we have approval of the minutes of the May 27th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Pym, second.
Right, so Commissioner Rudolph moves and Commissioner Pinn seconds. Nellie, do we have discussion?
I have a few discussion points like to bring to the attention and see what the thoughts are. But on the comments from the public, the minutes are very clear that the developer indicated there was no bleed over or there was no observations to adjacent apartments. No tenants were opting to park on the street, but that was directly contradicted by several of the call-in members. So I would like to have that amended or at least put in there. On the second page, I think that you meant 1.125 spaces per unit meet city code because that's how it was presented. We then rejected that and then approved with condition to 1.25. And then finally, on our motion, I believe we did it in 2 steps where we rejected as presented and then approved as it states in the minutes by granting a conditional use permit as long as there's an additional condition that the PUD approved parking ratio is a minimum of 1.25 stalls. So I think we're missing a motion in the minutes. That's all I have.
Is there any response to that or from staff, or do you just take a note of that?
No, I think Commissioner Hayford O'Leary had something to add there. I was waiting for that.
Yeah. I don't recall us rejecting the motion. Typically, when we're approving the motion as amended, we had a whole discussion about whether to first motion it as the staff thing or make a motion as Commissioner Lavin did of including an amendment. I have no recollection of us making a motion to reject it, and if so, we don't know who voted for it. So I don't know about that. I guess I agree with, it's kind of weird that I feel like technically our minutes don't need to reflect this discussion stuff at all, but I think it would be fine to note, as Commissioner Lavin suggested, that neighbors expressed concern about the cars that were currently parked on the street. I would be uncomfortable with us saying that they were from that apartment building or something like that, because we really can't verify that. But I think it'd be fine to say that they disagreed with that.
Other discussion? Melissa?
Commissioner Quam, I will say that originally Commissioner Lavin did make a motion to deny the approval. And then we went back and we said, is that what you mean? I think that what you're requesting is to approve with amendments. And then he withdrew that motion and said, yes, I wish to make wish to move to approve with amendments. That's what I'm trying to do. You know, the minutes are summary minutes, so all of this isn't always reflected. And we did probably skip over that back and forth.
Thank you.
I
Commissioner Lavin?
do recall I remember the conversation saying, well, there's two ways of doing it. One, approving it with an amendment based on what we actually wanted, and also a way of rejecting it as is and then reapproving. It's splitting hairs, I know, but I thought we were missing a motion. And then I just want to make sure we're all in concurrence that 1.25 should be changed to 1.125 in the minutes. And I'm fine either way on the motion. I mean, in the end, we're at where we're at, so I think we're fine with that. I just didn't recall it going that way.
And I would have to go back and listen to that specific discussion to determine if it was at that point, if we were talking about 1.125, the 1.25 with the 10% reduction, or if we were just talking about the straight requirement, which is 1.25. And I don't remember the discussion verbatim, and I can't speak to whether or not in that context that number is right. If the Planning Commission is not comfortable moving to approve the minutes as they are, or with the amendment as Commissioner Lavin and Commissioner Hayford O'Leary have supported, where we note that the neighbors disagreed with the developer's portrayal of the parking, then we can bring these minutes, we can re-listen and bring the minutes back to you next month. That is another option.
I guess the only reason why I'm bothered a little bit is because we made a motion at 1.25 and it's saying that, I mean, there's no change reflected in these minutes from what was presented to what was finally recommended. I mean, we recommended with the motion saying 1.25 and you're already saying that 1.25 is code. I don't see why I don't see the change in I don't see the action in which we did reflected in these minutes. I mean, it was originally presented at 1.125, but we said no.
Sure, and I do see in the motion specifically below that it's 1.25. So perhaps that is correct, that it should have been 1.125 there. And if the Planning Commission is comfortable, then you should move to amend the minutes to include those two statements that you would like, and then the Commission can vote on that. We can make that amendment, or we can make those changes then before we post.
I think we have a motion on the table. Do we need to?
I don't know that you have a formal motion, do you?
Yeah, we do. There was a second. Commissioner Lavin, you should just make an amendment. You should make a motion to amend if you want to do it that way.
Okay. I make a motion to amend the meeting minutes to reflect those two items that were discussed, the 1.125 and then the additional comments from the call-in participants regarding the additional parking on 64th Street from the projects across the street.
A second. Any discussion? Commissioner Hayford O'Leary.
I feel like I'm being picky now, but I'm not super comfortable approving the minutes when we don't have the language. So my preference would be to have staff bring us new minutes next month and just make these fixes, because there's not any urgent reason to have this up. And I guess my request of staff would be, if you could just clarify that like both 1.125, 1.25 would meet code, and just like briefly mention that, since we're going through the effort to sort of go through this, and this has been a sticking point, just so that's sort of reflected in the history of this project and what happened here. That would be my preference.
I'm fine with having the minutes come back to us as long as it reflects what we talked about here tonight.
Let's do that then. We'll bring them back to you next month.
Okay.
like that idea, so I'll throw my motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on. We'll bring those back next month. Next is open forum, which is an opportunity for residents to address the commission on items not on tonight's agenda. People can go to Richfield's website and then to the Planning Commission agendas and minutes page for directions on how to participate in open forum, either through email or message. Did you receive any comments for open forum tonight? And could people please have a lot of background? Do we have any comments?
Chair Quam, we did not receive any comments for open forum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to encourage the public to look at that webpage so you know how to do that. All right, next we have approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion for that?
Commissioner Hayford, motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rudolph, second.
Okay.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. Nellie, did you get the first and second or the motion and second? If so, would you take roll call?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Hayford O'Leary,
Aye.
Commissioner Lavin,
Aye.
Commissioner Pinn,
Aye.
Chair Quam,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosenberg. Oh, absent. Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
5 ayes. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Thank you, Nellie. All right, so first on our agenda under general business, we will consider the 2022 to 2025 capital improvement program and a finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan of the capital improvement program and the 2021 capital improvement budget. We have a guest, Finance Director Chris Regis is here with us tonight to speak on these. Staff?
Thank you, Chair Quam. My camera isn't working, but I am still here. So to present this item, yes, Chris Regis is here tonight, but as a reminder, each year the city manager makes a recommendation to the city council regarding the capital improvement budget for the upcoming year. The Planning Commission is responsible for reviewing the capital improvement program and making a recommendation to the city council. So the commission is also responsible for ensuring that the CIB and CIP, these documents, are consistent with the comprehensive plan. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're reviewing this document to make sure that the projects in it are consistent with the comprehensive plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
We can't hear you, Chris. We can't hear you, Chris.
I think I unmuted you, Chris. You want to try again? Nope, still can't hear you.
Just a sec.
There we go.
Darn it. How do I get out of this? That didn't work. All right, let's go to stop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We can't see your
All right,
presentation.
I'm sorry for the problem. That's my fault. I jumped ahead of myself. Okay, I think I'm on track now. I apologize. I just got a short PowerPoint presentation that kind of goes over the 2021 budget and the 2022-2025 capital improvement plan. Melissa already touched on some of this. The projects are identified by city commissions and city departments. Preliminary report is generated by the city manager and presented to the Planning Commission, which we're doing tonight. The Planning Commission then reviews the project based on the following consideration: that the proposed projects within the budget and the plan conform to the comprehensive plan. And once the Planning Commission approves the budget and the plan, it is then returned to the city manager, who formalizes it and then returns it to, includes it within our annual budget. So the total 2021 capital improvement budget right now, as it stands, is at $28,930,000. And the total 2022-2025 capital improvement plan is at $89,444,000. Some of the major significant projects are in 2021, 77th Street underpass. The estimated project cost of that is $23.6 million. And beginning in 2021 is a 5-year pavement management program that's going to piggyback on the 6-year mill and overlay program. And the estimated cost of that over the life, I think it's about a 4-year plan, 5-year plan, is $4.5 million. And then in 2021, they're going to continue the citywide water meter upgrade. It's been suspended for this year. They started it in 2019, but it's going to be suspended for obvious reasons. And the estimated project cost of that overall is $4 million. Then in 2022, 65th Street reconstruction project is planned. The estimated cost of that is $7.8 million. Nothing really significant in 2023, but we'll move on to 2024, and they have 69th Street reconstruction. Cost of that, estimated cost of that is $5.5 million. And then we move on to 2025, which is the 70th Street reconstruction project, estimated at $3 million. Then beyond 2025, we get into some significant projects, some city-county project sharing. 76th Street West is scheduled for $5.7 million. Humboldt Avenue is at $8 million. Nicollet Avenue is a city-county share, and that's 19.5. And Penn Avenue is the same thing, and that's at a 19.5. Those are really the significant projects that are within the budget and the plan. And I think that's all I have. I'll try to answer any questions you may have. I went through that fairly quickly, so I apologize for that.
I don't know if the chair is calling on people now, or I'm just going to go for it here. I was just curious, that beyond 2025 items, does that mean like no funding is identified, or could even ones that have a date associated mean that funding is not identified and it's just something that's on the radar?
Well, they've got funding identified. It's primarily bonding, and then for the Nicollet and the Penn, it's county funding and bonding again. But for the first two, it's primarily bonding.
Okay, I guess I'm just wondering, what does it mean for it to be beyond 2025? Because when I just look at it in a PDF, it almost seems like it's like a wish list of the future, and it doesn't seem as sort of real as something that has a year associated. These 4 projects have been on there. I think the purpose is to get them on the plan so they're there. So if the approval happens, or if it comes time to do it, it's been on the capital improvement plan. And the idea of the plan is if projects move on down the year and eventually end up on the budget year where they're actually going to get constructed and stuff. That's the way I understand it to work. So they're on there as kind of a marker that they're here, and they say, hey, we need to do these, but we don't need to do them now. Okay, thank you. Does that help? Yeah, that does.
Commissioner Lavin?
Just a quick question. For the 77th Street underpass, you have other funding. What is that bonding?
I believe the effort is to get state bonding for that, and we had a bill in the legislature this year, but as you well know, things aren't working out so well with that. They haven't passed a bonding bill yet, and I'm not sure, but I think it's within that bonding bill, but that bonding bill has not passed, and I'm unsure as to whether if the bonding bill ever does pass, if that's included in that, but to me, that's what the other funding is.
So if it doesn't come from the state level, does that halt the project indefinitely?
That I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I know this project has been on there for it's been on there as long as I've worked here, and they're finally getting to fruition with it. But if it doesn't get on this year, they'll go try again next year. That's just me speaking. That's nothing official from the city manager or anything, or the public works director.
Okay.
I don't want to put words in their mouths.
The last question I had is the 69th Street reconstruction. What part of 69th Street is that?
That would be between Penn Avenue and Xerxes Avenue.
Okay. what does that entail? Do you know offhand, or is that?
No, I
I'm just-
do not know
okay.
what it entails offhand. Be
I'm
honest with
assuming
you,
labor.
I kind of compiled the numbers together. I don't know the great details of the projects and stuff.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Any other questions? All right. Would someone like to make a motion to recommend approval of the 2022 through 2025 capital improvement program? So moved by Chair Plum.
And second.
Was that Commissioner Pinn?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any more discussion? Commissioner Hayford O'Leary.
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, I will be voting for this because the projects are pretty clearly cut in the comprehensive plan. And I think staff has been clear in the past that our job is pretty limited here to verify that. But, you know, we don't get a sense of priority from the comp plan. And it's a little hard for me to see the 77th Street underpass very imminent and $24 million. And to see something like 65th Street that's going to really affect a lot more people, more traffic, more businesses that costs a quarter of the price. It does feel like that's occupying a disproportionate amount of our public funding, and it's just a little hard to see, but it is ultimately in the plan. The plan does not specify like relative importance, so I will be voting for it, but it gives me pause to see that number relative to some of the other things that are on the plan.
Any other discussion? All right. In that case, Nellie, would you take roll call vote on this motion?
Yes, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good. Commissioner Hayford O'Leary.
Aye.
Commissioner Lavin.
Aye.
Commissioner Pinn.
Aye.
Chair Quam.
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
5 ayes, no nays. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Thanks, Nellie. And then the second motion would be to adopt a resolution finding that the 2021 capital improvement budget and 2022 through 2025 capital improvement program are consistent with the comprehensive plan. Do you have a motion for that?
Commissioner Pinn, so moved.
Thank you. Second?
Commissioner Rudolph, second.
All right, discussion? In that case, Nellie, will you take roll call?
Can I just get clarification on who seconded?
Commissioner Rudolph.
Thank you. Okay, roll call. Commissioner Hayford O'Leary.
Aye.
Commissioner Lavin.
Aye, sorry.
Commissioner Pinn.
Aye.
Chair Quam.
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
5 ayes, no nays. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Thanks, Nellie, and thanks, Mr. Regis, for all your work on this.
You're welcome. Sorry about the snafu about the mic.
That happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next, we have public hearings, and our first public hearing tonight is to consider a request for a conditional use permit to allow small wireless facilities in the right-of-way near 7108 Lindale Avenue South. Staff?
Thank you, Chair Quam. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. SAC Wireless, on behalf of AT&T, is requesting approval of a conditional use permit to allow the installation of a small wireless facility in a residential area. The applicant is proposing to attach small wireless equipment to a city-owned light pole adjacent to property at 7108 Lindale Avenue South. This location was identified by AT&T's radio frequency engineers as an area where cellular coverage is lacking and where light poles, utility poles, or other structures, in this case specifically a light pole, could feasibly hold a small wireless facility. The proposed small wireless facility is able to fill a pocket of poor cellular coverage that signals from a traditional tower cannot reach. In order to approve a CUP, the council must find that the request is consistent with the purpose and goals of the city's comprehensive plan and zoning code, complies with applicable performance standards, and will not cause undue adverse impacts on government facilities, utilities, or services, or on the public health, safety, or welfare. It's a pretty brief staff report. I will say that this is identical to a few reports that have come before the commission in the second half of 2019. Last summer, we saw a batch of, I believe, 6 of these locations, and then 1 more last fall. This Lindale Avenue location was supposed to come forward as part of that first batch with the other 6. But as we all know, Lindale Avenue was under construction at the time, and the light fixtures changed, so the applicant took a step back and worked with our Public Works Department to design this facility to go on to the style light poles that are on Lindale Avenue. So finding that the proposal meets requirements, staff is recommending approval of the CUP for a small wireless facility at 71 Avenue South. That's all I have for the staff report. The applicant is on the meeting as well. If you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Did the applicant want to add anything at this point?
My name is Joe Goldschlack. I'm representative of SAC Wireless.
Oh, can't quite hear you.
Oh, is this better?
A little bit.
There, how about that? That works.
Okay.
I'll speak loudly, but
There.
no, I think that's just about all of the details. I'm happy to answer any questions about the technology itself, or I guess any concerns that anyone might have. But if so, I'd also like to say I appreciate the opportunity to do this virtually, seeing this more and more, and it's a very good solution, and happy to be able to see everyone's face.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff or Commissioner Hayford O'Leary?
One first, probably for the applicant, just to clarify. So most of the poles on Lindale Avenue are in the grassy boulevard between the trail and the curb. It looks like from your diagram, it'll be like in the trail. Is that right? Or it shows it like 11 feet back from the curb, if I'm reading that right.
Let me just pull up the construction drawings very quick.
Look at the document that says Enlarge Site Plan.
Yeah, so I guess, yes, it's 11 feet from the back of the curb.
Okay,
Yeah, it should be replacing an existing pole that's there right now.
okay. I guess I'm just a bit. It looks like it's sort of like in the trail, but am I not understanding that correctly?
Oh, no,
Commissioner.
no. It's replacing the pole that is there, and the graphic, I see what you're. It's I guess if you look up one page on the overall site plan, it's probably a little more. But or I mean, in terms of the background, I guess, but
Yeah. So the one above that shows the old sidewalk location of the previous street and not the current conditions. Where it says existing concrete walkway that hasn't existed in a year, and the existing grassy strip is basically the other side of the sidewalk at this point.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm not 100% sure. I can definitely get back to you on the exact location. I know because I'm we're based out of Chicago, so I haven't been down there, but I know that the plan was to replace an existing pole.
Okay.
So this is wherever that pole is currently, it'll be within a few feet of that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
Commissioner Rudolph?
So I'm looking at the plans right now, and it looks like it's 11 feet 11 inches, and then another 1 feet 6 inches back for the pole. Melissa, what is the right of way? Is that just 12 feet?
I'm sorry, is the right of way 12 feet?
Yeah.
I don't know the actual right of way width at this location. I think that what Sean is seeing on these diagrams, I think the circle there is the base of the pole, and that is in the grass. I think the actual light fixture hangs over the trail. That's what we're looking at. That's why it looks like it's extending into the pavement area, but that's just the lighting.
Okay, just looking at this, I see 11 feet, reading a lot of building diagrams and things like that. I see 11 feet, 11 inches plus 1 feet, 6 inches. And I thought the right of way in most residential areas were 12 feet.
That's right. Generally, back of curb in Richfield, we require 12 feet in a residential area. A lot of times in commercial districts, we look for more because there are so many utilities running through that. This particular diagram isn't showing the right-of-way line. It's just showing the end of the sidewalk. So I don't know offhand what they have for right-of-way on Lindell Avenue.
First of all, did Mr. Goldschlack, are you trying to chime in?
I was just going to say, I know that one of the struggles our engineers were having is that the road has changed. That was the whole reason that this one fell out of the last batch. So if any of those are shown incorrectly, I know, again, I usually use Google Earth as the method for kind of explaining this to the public, but since that's not accurate, it's been kind of a struggle for me as well. I know that the plan is to replace a pole that is already there.
Commissioner Pan?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify for Commissioner Rudolph. It looks like the right-of-way actually is listed on the very far left of the drawing, and it looks about right for a county road where they'd have really heavy right-of-ways, way larger than the 12-foot typically from back of curb. Unless RW is actually standing for something else, but it seems, seems like that might actually be it. But either way, I think we're all reading that right in terms of how it is situated off the sidewalk as drawn here. So we're at least 1.5 feet off of that.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, we'll go on to open it up to the public.
Yeah, Chair Quam, the only last thing I was going to add is just to say that the Assistant City Engineer has reviewed these plans as well. The Public Works Department is very heavily involved with, I guess, that everything other than the conditional use permit process. The Public Works Department handles the actual permitting, citing, and inspection of these. And they do. The Public Works Department would be responsible for ensuring that the new pole is very similarly located to the current new pole that's out there today.
All right. We will now hear from the public on this matter. As indicated in the mailing related to this hearing, the legal publication, and on our website, public comment is accepted via voicemail, letter, or email. You may also provide live testimony during our public hearing by calling the number provided on the agenda and on our Planning Commission agendas and minutes webpage. I'll repeat that number now and then later. That number is 612-861-0651. First of all, I'll ask if we have any callers in the queue, and then I will give some brief instructions for the callers if we do. Moderator, do we have any callers, or Melissa?
Chair Kwan, there are no callers at this time.
All right, thank you. I will withhold the instructions then. But just so anyone watching knows that you can participate live in our public hearings, you can also still write or leave a voice message for those. All right, do we have a motion to close the public hearing? Do you need that?
Hayford motion. Or
All right,
second.
thank you. I'll second. Nellie, will you is there any discussion? Nellie, will you take roll on closing the public hearing?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Hayford O'Leary,
Aye.
Commissioner Lavin,
Aye.
Commissioner Pinn,
Aye.
Chair Quam,
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 5 ayes, no nays, and the motion passes.
Thank you, Nellie. Okay, we have a second public hearing to consider changes to the city's zoning code that would eliminate the need for a conditional use permit for small wireless facilities and wireless support structures in the single-family residential districts. Staff?
Thank you, Chair Quam. I'm going to quickly try to switch technology so that you don't have to listen to my disembodied head.
Sorry, Chair, we haven't voted on the actual motion, have we? I thought that was just the motion
No.
to close the public hearing.
Oh, better
Yeah,
do that.
finish the vote.
We haven't voted.
Thank you. Sorry about
well,
that.
I'll move to approve the CUP.
Commissioner Pinn, second.
Okay. All right, so Commissioner Hayford O'Leary moves in, Commissioner Pinn seconds this motion for the CUP that we just discussed. Is that good? Okay, any more discussion? Okay, Nellie, would you take roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair Quam. Commissioner Hayford O'Leary, Commissioner Lavin,
Aye.
Commissioner Pinn,
Aye.
Chair Quam,
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
The 5 ayes, the ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Thank you again. Okay, now we will move on to our second public hearing. And thanks for jumping in, by the way, Commissioner Hayford O'Leary. Our second public hearing tonight to consider changes to the city's zoning code that would eliminate the need for a conditional use permit for small wireless facilities and wireless support structures in the single-family residential districts. Staff?
Thank you, Chair Quam. So now we can kind of see me. Okay, so in 2017, the Minnesota legislature, everyone can hear me too.
Yes.
The legislature amended state law to expressly allow the installation of small wireless facilities and wireless support structures like we just considered in the right-of-way. This right is subject to local governmental authority to manage right-of-way permitting, but the city's authority to deny permits in the right-of-way is very limited. Cities were permitted to make such facilities or structures a conditional use in right-of-way located adjacent to single-family districts. And given that cities were not permitted to adopt a moratorium to study this further in 2017, our city attorney recommended that we do that, and the council did. Since the adoption of that regulation 2 years ago, staff has continued to study the potential aesthetic and spacing guidelines for all small wireless facilities. At a May 26 work session, I presented a set of regulations to the City Council that I've been working on with the City Attorney's Office and the Public Works Department. Those regulations are attached to your staff report for reference, but I do want to make a note that they would be part of the city code. So they're not specifically here to be voted on by you tonight, although I would love to hear feedback from you to incorporate as we move forward with that vote by the City Council. These regulations, like I said, would apply to all installations in the right-of-way, regardless of their zoning district. Not just the single family like the CUP does now. Staff also recommended to the council that the requirement for a CUP or conditional use permit in the single family residential districts be removed. The CUP process invites the public to participate in the consideration of an application that in this case, the city has little to no authority to deny. Participants have frequently expressed health concerns related to these installations. However, established guidelines related to human exposure to the radio frequency electromagnetic fields are set by the Federal Communications Commission, and the city has no authority to deny based on, as long as the installations meet those requirements. So here we have a process that invites public comment, but offers no legitimate opportunity for influence, which erodes public trust and is frustrating for us. It's frustrating for those who participate. It's frustrating for you and the council. So specifically for those reasons, staff is recommending that we eliminate the conditional use permit, and the council agreed with that recommendation. That is the change that is within the zoning ordinance, and that's what you're voting on tonight. I did just want to, before we move on to talk about that, talk a little bit about what we've proposed for these regulations. Like I said, we worked with the city attorney's office. They have a specialist in their office on this particular item, and they sent us several sets of regulations from other communities that have adopted these standards. So we looked at Burnsville, Worthington, Lakeville, and Winona in particular. And then we also took the feedback that we had heard from the Planning Commission at other meetings and the City Council at previous public hearings. And that's how we came up with these. So going through them a little bit, what we'd be looking for is that the antennas, the new installations, be shrouded in some type of canister. That we talk about the location of the antenna on the pole, preferring it to be directly above the pole, so it's an extension of the pole as opposed to something that's coming out and extending off of the side, if possible. We talk about the aesthetics of the support structure itself. The color, the material. We talk about the location of that support structure, wanting to, whenever possible, have it installed on a property line so that it's not directly in front of, say, a residential property where someone's looking out their window and that's what they're seeing, rather putting it in between potentially front windows of offices or commercial or residential properties. We talked about colors, the regulations guide the trimming of trees so that we're not damaging trees when these installations go in. So they're fairly detailed. We did try to be very thorough. And so I think that concludes staff's report. I just wanted to give you the details on what we would be proposing to the City Council in addition to the removal of the conditional use permit.
Thank you. I had a question about a couple things. The regulations you talked about that would apply to all of the small wireless facilities, not necessarily the ones that require a CUP. You talked a lot about aesthetics. Are these binding regulations? I thought that those were out of our control when we talked about them at a July meeting, that we couldn't say about where it would be placed because that came up in our conversation.
Right. Thank you, Chair Quam. These do include spacing requirements. I didn't mention that. That is very important. They do include spacing requirements. Are they binding? The city can impose reasonable regulations. If an installation cannot go in that and meet all of these criteria, no, the city essentially has to waive them. One of the criteria that the city attorney was a little bit concerned about was this canister regulation that requires them to be completely enclosed within something. Although I am seeing all of the installations have those, but if for some reason an array could not be enclosed, we would have to make accommodations.
Okay. And then also my other question for staff was, you mentioned at the work session that you also proposed removing, taking away the CUP requirement. You discussed that and presented on that to the council, and I believe the majority agreed that was a good idea. And I'm confused about the sequence here, because we are going to then recommend to the city council, if they've already kind of taken a position, but based on the work session, then what is our role?
Well, we took there was a work session. It was particularly about how many of these installations have gone in. It was an update on small cell. And as part of that, it was early in our time on public meetings, having work sessions with 15 to 20 people on these Webex meetings can get challenging. And so we took the proposed revisions that would apply to all small wireless to the city council because they will vote on those. And
Right.
what we said to them was, if you approve these, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have this conditional use permit in addition to that. And we'd have to talk to the planning commission about that. But we did ask them if they would be supportive. And based on our recommendation about just the futility of these hearings, they were supportive.
Okay. And how could the regulations be changed once they're accepted?
These will be part of the city code, so they would be amended like any other ordinance.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Rudolph and then Commissioner Penn.
So I guess I'm kind of confused doing this before city code would be changed, but I thought this really was, was presented to us when we talked about this at length last summer. It was really the only protection that we had as a city for putting up maybe, too many of these, or, in a neighborhood, whether, their aesthetics weren't nice or anything like that, that the only protections we had at the time. And I think that was pointed out why we went down this route before.
Commissioner Rudolph, what we're proposing is that we adopt standards that apply to all poles as opposed to just the conditional use permit that only applies when adjacent to the single family residential district.
So would we be jumping the gun to approve this beforehand, before the regulations change?
Commissioner Rudolph, sure. The Planning Commission is a recommending body. So you are holding a public hearing here, but the city council ultimately has to approve all changes to the zoning code in addition to the city code. So we are holding the public hearing for this portion with the Planning Commission. Next, we'll move to a first reading of both ordinances at the city council. And then we will have a second public hearing to consider the ordinance changes that specify those regulations with the city council. Ultimately, the city council has to approve both of these things, but we are looking for a recommendation by the Planning Commission before that. Procedurally, that's how we handle changes to the zoning code.
Commissioner Penn?
To kind of piggyback off of Commissioner Rudolph, but also a little bit new info here. So I see that, attention was paid to spacing. And I remember spacing was a huge issue in that last discussion last year. And, I see we have 300 feet from other, radially from other facilities. But I don't know, I guess maybe I'm asking, was it discussed on how we can regulate competing companies who are trying to get continuous coverage across all of this? Is everybody supposed to be able to use the same tower, or multiple companies can, access the same utility pole, or is it all proprietary? It's one company per pole and that's all they get. I don't really understand how that works, and if that can be addressed here, because I do worry about huge gaps in coverage, and we still have them squashed in the city at every 300 feet, so I'm just, I don't know if that can be addressed through this process, or if we had thought about that. I don't know if you have any feedback on that.
There is Commissioner Penn section in there. I didn't cover it tonight, but it is in the ordinance that says that the enclosure shall be, the small wireless facility and enclosure shall be co-located on the wireless support structure. So what we are looking for is for them to double up if possible. What we have heard from some of the providers is that they actually interfere with each other. And I don't know that. It's not my area of expertise to say whether or not that's possible for all of the companies. We definitely are encouraging that they do that.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if it necessarily solves the problem down the road of, competition, coverage, the need for more poles every 150 feet or what have you, but I guess that's about the best we can get for right now. I mean, I guess if they are sharing the pole though, according to what we have written here, those would stack vertically then?
Potentially, there is an ultimate height limit.
Okay.
And if I'm not sure structurally if they could stack one antenna on top of another. I don't know the answer to that.
But we are requiring that they stack vertically in the first place, from what it sounds like, though, for the poles themselves, right?
That's correct. We are requiring that their first attempt is directly above the pole as opposed to an extension.
Okay, I was getting some clarification. Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Hayford O'Leary.
I guess just one first clarification is Brian's question about spacing. I understood the spacing thing to be from other antennas of this type and not specific to one company or one provider. Is that like if AT&T, if I'm T-Mobile or whatever, and AT&T has an antenna 50 feet away, can I put one there because it's a different company? Or can I not be there because it's still within 300 feet of another antenna?
It's 300 feet from any other installation, not one of.
Okay, that was my understanding. Thank you. I honestly, when I read this, I was less concerned than after something that Melissa said about like, we still have to approve it if they don't do anything, which kind of is troubling to me. How much of it, is that just the aesthetic stuff, or is the spacing also like, if again, like T-Mobile says, okay, but we can't get good coverage here, you have to approve this thing 50 feet from the other antenna. Does the city just have to go with it?
We'd have to consult with their attorneys on the specifics of each individual installation, but if they were able to come back with a study that said we cannot install at this distance and we must be here, it is the only location where this will work, I don't believe we would be able to deny.
Okay. Can you express a little bit more about like what that bar is? And I got a question from a resident who read this too and was like, because some of the stuff's a little bit squishy, even about the aesthetics, and like they need to make sort of a good effort to do that. Like, how do they prove that they're not just, they don't want to and it costs more, so they're not going to do it? Like, how does staff determine that they've made a sincere effort and this is the only option available?
I don't know that there is anything that's less squishy. I think that we have seen what is available and what they've done in other locations, and we will continue to work with them on that. Our experience has been that the providers are absolutely willing to do whatever we're asking of them. They are making, as far as we can tell, their best attempt to meet our requirements and even to work with us when we haven't had these in place in the code, when we have requested that they consider another location for a particular reason. For instance, the Lindale project, we requested that they relocate that. They have been willing to work with us. That's our experience.
Okay, so I definitely like the general idea that we don't want to create public input that misleads people and frustrates them when everybody comes and says they don't want it, and then we have to approve it anyway. My only concern is that by giving that up, it is one incentive, even if they have a lot of legal power, to come with a good proposal, because it could ultimately delay their project if they come up with something that's hideous and in the wrong place. Even if, in a year they would win in a court battle. And when we remove that process and optimize it, and we still don't have the power to make them do anything, I worry that we're losing an incentive for them to come with a good product the first time.
This is Chair Quam. I'm wondering if we should open this up to the public and then we can discuss it more after. Do we have anyone from the public holding to talk to us about this consideration?
Here, Quam, I'm not seeing that there are any callers on the line.
All right, thank you. Then I'd like to open it up to further discussion or questions like we've been doing. And I am in agreement with some of what Commissioner Hayford O'Leary said, and I feel rather strongly that if we give this up now, there won't be that incentive to have to. And obviously, like tonight, if tonight is any example, we're not getting any public, we're not sitting through a long, painful public hearing where the public feels they're not being heard. I know that could happen. That happens to us all the time because we have to follow the rules. But I understand the idea of not doing it if our hands are so tied, but our hands are not completely tied. We have that narrow margin, the conditions of the conditional use permit. If we relinquish that, we will not be able to weigh in at all in the future. So, and we haven't seen many of these yet. I feel like we could make this change recommend this change to the code in 6 months or down the road a little. Why so soon when this is a relatively new application that we're seeing? We have the neighborhood character, to stand on as far as aesthetics, which I understand you're doing a lot of that already, staff, with the regulations you've written up. But I don't see any reason to let go of the CUP requirement at this point. And then our hands really will be tied if something comes up that we think we'll never get it back. So what else? I mean, that's the one authority we have from the Minnesota legislature, is to require CUPs in single-family residential or historic sites. That's the little bit we have, and I'm not going to vote in favor of this because I don't believe we should give it up. I would reconsider. I would revisit this, or if it was up to me in 6 months, and see if we still agree that's a good idea. Commissioner Rudolph?
I completely agree with Chair Quam and Commissioner O'Leary that I think it is too soon. And I think maybe further down the road, I could support something like this, but not at this point.
Commissioner Lavin?
The item that I'm struggling with is where would we have influence if these came before us? And it sounds from the city administration that our hands are pretty much tied on these. And I don't like having that scenario where we have a lot of people that are, opinionated on this process or have their concerns with the particular facility being installed, either close to them or in general. And yet we're limited. We have limited option to act on that. And if we really do have limited options to act on that, then I guess I'm more in favor of not having this become something that we deal with. Now, if someone can tell me where we would be, give me a scenario that if it comes before us, we could say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, and we could have influence to say that this isn't something that we should be approving. I'm willing to listen to that, but from what I understand, I'm not sure exactly what that scenario would be. So I guess I'll throw it back to anyone. And again, there is talk about delaying this and seeing how this, maybe it's too soon. I'm not really opposed to that. I just want to make sure if we are going to be hearing these things or having these come before us, that we do have an opportunity to influence. I'll step back.
Commissioner Penn?
Thank you. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but it just seems like I felt very powerless in the last couple meetings where we had to approve these, and this is why this is coming forth, through staff and their discussions with the attorney and everything else that's come about as a result of this. I'm weighing the benefit of giving staff the authority to. I feel like it makes more sense to have staff have the authority to walk through this process with a developer. I don't really feel like the incentive is so much removed because they still have to come, like the applicant still has to come forward and meet these requirements, I guess. And staff can still say yay or nay. And if it's something that in past experience, and I don't know if this has happened with this or not, but in past experiences, when there's been a kind of a gray area, staff's not quite so comfortable with it, I feel like they've always punted to the planning commission for a final verdict anyway. And a lot of times it is for the variance process, but if they're not meeting one of these conditions, which seem fairly reasonable to me when I look through them, I feel like I would rather have that process than, again, to have everybody come to the meeting and say 5G is terrible. I mean, I'm still on the fence about 5G. I'm still on the fence about all these things. But at the same time, like, we're so powerless against this right now. This is not our avenue, And so I'm inclined to support this and inclined to support any changes that we need to make as a result of one rule not applying, tweaking this, having a chance to revisit this after 6 months and see, at least with staff, to see how this has been going and how applicants have been kind of falling in line with what we've outlined here. But I think I'm going to tend to support it just because I feel like the benefit outweighs our novel authority. I mean, I just don't think we have authority here, and I think it's kind of meritless for us to come all the way through this process to have us be a rubber stamp on something that just feels like we'd be trying to turn this down because it doesn't have the right color. Like I'm not really feeling that. I think I'm tend to support this. So.
Commissioner Hayford O'Leary.
First, I just wanted to clarify with staff. It seems like a couple of comments has been like the assumption the planning commission should only be involved if there's like an ambiguity in whether something is complying or not. And if I understand this correctly, if this goes forward and is passed by council, we would never see an application for one of these again, right? Because they would be approved internally by staff.
That's correct. They would not come back to the planning commission. The regulations would be in the city code.
Yep.
If it was a variance procedure, it would go to the city council rather than the planning commission. The idea here, to clarify what we're trying to do, is to put in all of the possible regulations that we've discussed at previous meetings, like spacing requirements and aesthetic requirements and screening requirements, and codify those so that they apply to all installations, not just like this conditional use permit where it only applies in residential districts. If we, I do feel that the city council is likely going to approve these regulations. They're going to adopt these because they'll apply throughout the city. And I think that's a good thing. And I believe that they agree. So if we have this conditional use permit in addition to that, I'm not sure what the planning commission would add to those stipulations that already exist. I guess that's where I struggle with keeping the conditional use permit. It seems almost more futile than it is right now because the regulations will be in the code. We'll just make them come to a public hearing as well. I can't, I'm having a hard time imagining what those additional criteria would be.
And so I'm still, can I just clarify, follow up on my question? You said the things would go to vary from those to the city council. So again, if they come forward and they're not going to shield it and it's like 8 feet off the ground and it's not, anyway, it does no, in no way complies. The city council sort of makes a determination if that's appropriate, or what is that process?
There isn't an official process written into this. I think if there was a disagreement where we needed to talk to a body about how to proceed, do we deny this and risk going to court? I think it's the city council that we talk to about that rather than the plan.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I basically would say I like the basic idea. I would vote to support what we're ultimately considering, which is the zoning code change. In terms of the city code they're accepting feedback on, I would say I would like it to be at least as inconvenient to put an unaesthetic pole that hurts the neighborhood as it is today. So if there's some way or some level of process that they need to prove or indicate that they can't meet these requirements, I'd like it to be a pain to deliberately do it, so there's not an incentive to just say, sorry, we can't, and the city has to roll over and accept it.
This is Chair Quam. I think one way it could be a pain is if they had to tell us why they should have a CUP, and the CUP, that second requirement about being consistent with the purposes of the zoning code, and that was what would relate to neighborhood character being a reasonable, it's a reasonable condition issue. And, you know, it's narrow, but we have that to argue if something came up that was just, we thought was really bad in a single family district. The attorney that was there from Kennedy and Gravin, he thought, you know, there were options for us to find denying the recommendation based on reasonable conditions. And I think we could make it clear at the beginning of the public hearing, okay, this is what we don't have any, our hands are tied when it's related to health issues, because that's determined by larger government entities than us. This is our only narrow bit, you know, and that could help curtail some of that, what seems futile discussion. So, I mean, the attorney had even said something about, well, I guess it's too messy to go down that health thing at all, I know, but I don't like that this will be completely out of our, having any second chance to weigh in on this. I don't think we're giving up that much by opening it up to the public hearing, especially if we make it really clear what we can and cannot vote for. That's it. Anybody? Commissioner Lavin?
Real quickly, so if we're putting this into code, rather than doing the CUP route, if they didn't meet the code, wouldn't they have to come before us for a variance?
Commissioner Lavin, this will be in the city code rather than the zoning.
The zoning code? Okay. I got it. Okay. Because I was thinking at least, you know, at that point, if the city would be interested in a recommendation from another body, we would provide that if there is a variance or whatever. But if it's not in our purview, then I understand that.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any other discussion. Do we? Commissioner Hayford O'Leary.
Well, I hate to muddy the waters because I feel like there's sort of a mixed opinion on whether this is generally a good idea, but just because Melissa did ask earlier if there's feedback on the city code aspect, the only part that I don't have like a specific suggestion, but to sort of consider like sight lines from apartment buildings and buildings that are above the height of where the pole is located. If that hasn't been considered, I hope it is. I have a few friends in downtown Minneapolis on like the second or third floor, and it's like right outside their window. So maybe the property line thing already addresses that, but if that's not something that's been taken into consideration, I hope we could think about that. If I think about those like senior buildings in downtown Richfield that could be negatively impacted.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion if someone would like to make one.
I have one more question. So, I mean, if this, what are we actually proposing if this doesn't pass right now? Like, what happens then? I'm having a hard time envisioning what that is.
Commissioner Pinn, I assume you're asking about process. What is the process if you do not recommend approval? This will still go to the city council. It will go to the city council with the knowledge that you did not recommend approval. That doesn't mean that they can't approve it, but they, like any other recommendation that you give, they get a notice of your recommendation. We discuss what happened here. We generally provide them with the minutes, and then they make the ultimate decision.
Thank you.
And just, we didn't actually close the public hearing. Do we need to do that even though there've been no, yeah, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Nellie, would you take roll?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Hayford O'Leary,
Aye.
Commissioner Lavin,
Aye.
Commissioner Pinn,
Aye.
Chair Quam,
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
5 ayes, the ayes have it, and the motion passes.
All right, thank you. Any more discussion? Otherwise, motion?
Commissioner Hayford O'Leary moved the staff recommendation on this item.
Second?
Commissioner Pinn, second. Did you hear me?
No. Did you second?
Commissioner Pinn, second, yes.
Thank you. All right, so we had a motion and a second on recommending changing the city's zoning code to eliminate the need for conditional use permit for small wireless facilities and wireless support structures in single-family residential districts. Discussion? Commissioner Lavin.
I'm gonna be voting for this, and again, the only reason why is I still haven't been able to discern what our influence would be in having these folks come before this committee when we really there's not a lot that we could do, and I just don't think that I want to make them jump through those hoops, and that's why I'll be voting for it.
Other discussion? Okay, Nellie, will you take roll?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Hayford O'Leary,
Aye.
Commissioner Lavin, Commissioner Pinn,
Aye.
Chair Quam,
No.
Commissioner Rudolph.
No.
That is 3 ayes, 2 noes. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item, we have liaison reports. First is Community Services Advisory Commission. Do we have a report?
Yeah. So I went to the community services meeting this month, and they discussed a few of the projects going on with up at the ice arena, and that is progressing well. A few of the other projects, some things have been put on hold with COVID-19. And then I gave the liaison report for the Planning Commission since I was present.
Wonderful, thank you. We do not have a City Council report tonight. We do not have a Housing and Redevelopment Authority report tonight. How about Richfield School Board?
Yes, one I wanted to add or bring to this group that we had a new activities director that was hired for the district. His name is Jared Ellerson. He's currently the activities director at Apollo High School in St. St. Cloud, and formerly at Osseo, and a former Minnesota Gopher football player. So he'll be replacing David Boy. I'm not sure exactly when he'll start, but that's that's a new addition in a key spot. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Next, Transportation Commission.
Yeah, the main thing was 65th Street. Transportation Commission did recommend sort of final layout or preliminary layout that the council will then approve. And I did just want to mention there was quite a long discussion about whether to open up Pillsbury Avenue in both directions. And on a tight vote, they did recommend doing that. But an interesting sort of like land use thing about currently the traffic goes by the apartment buildings. This would balance it more with a single family home block. So if you're curious about that, I would look at the layout and be aware of that. Oh, the one other thing to mention is that there's a sort of an issue, again, a planning thing with the Wendy's that was somewhat recently approved by the Planning Commission. The driveway locations are problematic for the roundabout, so the commission recommended that try to be addressed if it can be.
Thank you. We do not currently have a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, so that's the end of our liaison reports. And I just want to thank everybody for their reports. They really enrich our meeting, I think. And next is city planners reports.
Thank you. I just had one item tonight. Can you hear me? Okay. And that is to mention that last year we began a process with Hennepin County to study Penn Avenue. We had an open house over the winter, and this is specifically studying. It's in anticipation of someday the county coming through and reconstructing Penn Avenue, but some things that we can do in the interim as they prepare to do a mill and overlay in 2021. So we've been conducting that Penn Avenue study. We're ready to have another open house. It's going to be a virtual open house. And you can expect to start seeing advertisements for that soon. We anticipate it opening after the 4th of July and keeping that open for approximately 2 weeks for people to come, stop by, take a look. It's a great setup. Our consultant has done a great job. It's being reviewed by the county right now, but lots of opportunity for feedback on possible road designs and how those came about through our feedback from other open houses and other events. So just look for that in the coming weeks. And that's it.
Thank you, Melissa. Our next meeting of the Richfield Planning Commission will be Monday, July 27th at 7 p.m. again on Cisco Webex. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. Commissioner Lavin.
So actually, we were talking about Penn Avenue. I was going to ask. It was a while ago. I think there was a restaurant that was going to go into the sewing shop. I haven't seen anything with that particular building. Do you know if they're still planning on moving in? I think the sewing shop operation is, or a vacuum cleaner. Sorry. I think they had moved out, but I don't know if there was still plans for that existing site.
Right, for the teacup restaurant. Yeah. Right. No, they ended up deciding to look for another site. They were looking at some space in the Shops at Lindale development. I haven't had an update on that in some time. I'm not sure if Matt has. No, they will not be locating on Penn Avenue.
So is that building vacant? Do you know?
I believe
okay.
so. I believe
okay.
so, but I have not. I don't know for certain.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Pan.
I'm just going to let this meeting drag on until about 10 o'clock. No, I do have one question while we're on that Penn Avenue discussion. I saw that Canine College no longer has any signage on there. Was there movement on that, or is that allowed for discussion right now?
I'm not aware of that either. I didn't know their signs were gone. We haven't heard from our developer that they were able to acquire it, but that is something we will definitely look into.
Yeah, it was within like the last 2 weeks here, so I'm just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Penn moves and Commissioner Rudolph seconds, adjourning tonight's meeting. Nellie, will you take roll one more time?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Hayford O'Leary.
Aye.
Commissioner Lavin.
Aye.
Commissioner Pinn.
Aye.
Chair Quam.
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
The ayes have it and the motion passes.
All right, thanks everybody.